So now we're going to go into the demo. So we'll go over the demo agenda. Go ahead, Harish. Sorry.
Yep. So for this demo, what we'll be showcasing is how to set up a UiPath document understanding from scratch with using AI Center uh, for a complete custom document, not a pre-trained model that is available from UiPath. So both will show. So we'll deep dive into how to set up a custom document model. We are taking a simple reimbursement form. Of course, you would think that's a simple document to for a. I mean, that could be a much simpler document for an ML model to use. But for the demo itself, we are just taking. I think we could solve this using simpler mechanism. But for the sake of demo, we are using one simple reimbursement form, uh, and in that we'll have different stages of the setups. For example, data manager, AI fabric, taxonomy manager, and data extraction. And then we'll also show how to set up uh, using invoice as an invoice pre-trained model. So when we say pre-trained model, all these models come as part of UiPath document understanding that can be used. And there are in the marketplace, there are other partners also who would provide some varied ones. For example, invoice for India, invoice for Australia. There's few pre-trained models available. And at the end, we'll also show, if you have time, the setup of purchase order using invoice pre-trained model. So the whole objective is to show, assuming we have all these scanned documents coming into one single folder, we have few reimbursement forms, we have few invoices, we have few purchase orders, and the robot will pick all these documents, take it for processing, and then it'll automatically classify, saying, okay, which ones are reimbursement forms, which ones are invoices, and which ones are purchase orders, right? So these are all the agenda we have in place for the demo.
So, okay, so we can go through this in a bit. So let me stop sharing and we're going to pass the baton to Jyoti. So Jyoti, you can start sharing. So the first step is the data manager. So the data manager, we will explain as we go along here. So yeah, so the purpose of data manager is in essence to create some sample, take some sample documents, determine what are all the possible fields that this document contains, and then train and label some documents, um, and as well as the classification, so that basically we have some data with sample documents to feed the machine learning model. Yeah. So go ahead, Jyoti. So
Yeah, let me show you the sample document. So this is our sample document for the reimbursement. So unfortunately, we don't have this pre-trained model in our UiPath. So we are going to use our custom model in data manager. So let me show you the data manager. So this is our data manager. So it looks like this. So there are several fields, column fields, regular fields, and the classification fields. So let me explain now what is coming. First of all, first thing first, we need to setting up our OCR engine. So for now, we need to go to our settings, and we have a couple of options to choose our OCR engine. So for this, there is a Google Cloud Vision OCR and some other OCRs also. So in this case, I'm using UiPath Document OCR. So once we choose it, then we need to choose our endpoint here. So I'm just using our enterprise trial. So we are just, this is our endpoint for the UiPath document OCR. So meantime, after that, we need to provide our OCR key. So this where we can get it, we need to get it from our UiPath cloud platform. So let me show you where to get it. So if you go to admin, licenses, robot and services, so there is
Jyoti, you're kind of breaking up. So Harish.
So we need to, if you don't have it, you can generate a new one. So you need to copy.
Jyoti, you're kind of breaking up.
So I'll you can mute Jyoti. So I'll talk. Maybe you can just go back to the earlier data manager form. Yeah, I think those are all the some of the one-time steps where we predetermine what which OCR engine to use and so on. So in this, basically what we are doing, I mean, in a simple layman term, so data manager is used to label the documents. So this is the first time we are showing these documents to the tool, which is part of this data manager is again part of document understanding, and we label uh, based on these scanned images, maybe up to 10 or 15 variations of documents. We kind of define in this place, saying what are the labels eventually form the fields or the values that needs to be extracted in the document understanding using the ML skill. So basically, we are training here. We are labeling and telling the system that this is the place to look at, and this is the keyword to look at, and the information.
So
So
so go ahead, Jyoti. Go ahead and set up the OCR.
yeah.
So yeah, so basically just add. So we just in this case we get that from UiPath. So we just put in the key. Yeah. So now the OCR is set up. So now based on this, we know when we're doing the labeling which OCR engine to use for these sample documents. Just to be clear, regular fields are basically header level fields, like it could be header level or footer level. And then, so in this case, we're going to extract name, date, and the total, and so forth, right? So we're just going to do some sample just to demonstrate for now. So go ahead, go back to document and send. Yeah. So yeah, so now we're going to do the regular field. So let's say we do name. That's we want to extract the name. We create that, and yeah. So you can see here we can define what kind of field it is. Yeah. Click on that. So in this case, obviously a name is a string, but there are other kinds of fields that can be selected here. Go ahead. Yeah, post-processing. So this is basically to decide if there are multiple identified, which one should the engine go with. In this case, because name is in the beginning of the document, then we would go with first span. So the first one it detects, we'll go with that one. And then a few other options here. Scoring is basically if it's a close match or similar. So we'll go with Levenstein. Go ahead. And then yeah, add one more field. So it's a word date. So then it's a date field. And we do the same thing. Okay. So now we at least extract two fields on the header. Now let's select the column fields, which is basically the table, right? So typically it has a table with some line items in it. So let's add a couple of those as well. So we have description, it's one of them. That's a string. And we have amount. Yeah? Yeah. We're not, in this demo, we're not doing all of them. We will show later when we run the model. We'll save. And then the other is classification. This is basically to detect what kind of document. So is this a reimbursement form or an invoice or a PO? So in this case, we set up, let's say, reimbursement, but obviously like for an invoice, for example, there could be many words that classifies an invoice, factura, factura with a K, with a C, invoice, tax document, and so forth, right? So there are many words that can in essence be used to describe. So this basically helps the engine to basically classify, oh, okay, this is this kind of document, yeah? And then in order to, we're going to label these documents. So that means we're going to train, and right now we're just going to do one. So we have to basically load some sample documents in that can then be trained. So now we're just going to take a couple of these files that these are just kind of dummy files that we just created. But typically you should at least load at least 10, minimum 10. For this demo, we'll just do a couple. Yeah. Go ahead. So what is happening now? We're labeling. We're going to label. So now we're running the OCR. So the OCR is generic. It's just extracting the data from the files. And you can see it's done. So now the next step is to label these. So we pull up one of these documents. So you can see it has identified all of these different fields, but for the fields that we have defined here, it has not yet, we haven't told the system what it is. Yeah. So go ahead, select the name. So in this case, that's the name. We tag that as name. So that's the labeling part. And then we're going to do the date. And then we're going to do basically some of the classification fields, which is the table. So we do the description, mark that, and then we do the amount, mark that. And then basically we are in essence done, right? So, I mean, there are other fields here. Now we do the classifications. You can see here, yeah, it mapped this to petty cash reimbursement. Okay, so that's basically, after this is complete, then basically we would do this for many more documents. Right now it's just one, but at least 10, but the more the merrier, to be able to train the model. Then we would run export. And this basically would create a data set. Oh, shit. Okay, it requires more than 10, but we've already done this earlier. So we already have that pre-created. But this would, in essence, create a set of files, and we'll pass this to Dushi. He'll take it from there. Okay, so this is, in essence, the first step.
Yeah, let me share my screen.
Okay. Yeah.
So right now we completed the document labeling, right?
Yep.
So Jyoti completed document labeling. So once we completed the document label, so we can see here. So once we completed the labeling part, so what we will get is we will get one set of documents. So this is the output from our data manager. So we can see what are the images we used for labeling. These are the documents we used for labeling, and so some JSON files we did for the labeling part. So the values captured here, and some other additional information required for AI model training. So this is the first input for AI training. So once we got this, and we have to go to AI Center, UiPath.
Just go back to the PowerPoint.
So right now we are in this space.
So just want to highlight, all the ones that are in this blue color here, this is only really required when we're doing a custom document. So the other documents we're going to demonstrate in a little bit here is invoice and purchase order. In those cases, these three steps here is not necessary. But in this particular demo here right now, we're doing a custom model. So the output from the data manager, we can see, was that data set, those files that Dushi explained. Now the next step is we're going to go into UiPath AI Fabric, and we're going to load this, and then we're going to train the ML model.
So this one we already pre-trained one to show the demo. So I will, because it will take some time, so I will create a new project. So I could say document understanding.
So the reason it takes time is because this particular we have not enabled GPUs. So right now, even for 10 documents, it takes about 45 minutes, so it's quite slow. But once you enable GPUs, you would be able to process a lot more.
So the first step for defining our document understanding model, we need to upload the labeled data set. So here I have to click upload folder and just drag and upload. So it gets uploaded. We need to go for the ML packages. Okay. So my data set is updated. Go to ML packages. So here you can see we have a couple of options. One is uploading as a zip file. If you already know Python, you have ML background, you can complete your model, you can directly upload as a zip file. Or else you can go with the out of the box packages. So here we have some open source ML models and as well as an UiPath document understanding model. So here you can see image analysis, language analysis. These are the pre-trained model, some packages available. We go with the UiPath document understanding. So under the document understanding, we have document classifier, document understanding, and other pre-trained models. Let's say invoice Australia, invoice India, we have like that. So we are going with the document understanding because we are built from the scratch. If you are using any pre-trained model, let's say invoice model is already built by UiPath, you want to add additional fields, you have to choose respective model. So I'm built from scratch, so I choose document understanding. And here I have to choose the version. So I need to choose the latest version and I have to give a name. My, and I have to specify which OCR engine.
So think of the OCR engine that we did for the first round in Data Manager was for the purpose of labeling. Now we're going to do the same, but it could be really a different OCR engine here, but this is for the purpose of training the machine learning model, the ML model.
Yeah. So once I created my ML model, so it's in undeployed state.
Go back to the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So yeah, so right now we completed this step. We loaded the data set that was created from Data Manager. We chose the ML package. So this, even though you're creating a custom model, or you can still use other pre-trained models. So let's say you want to do invoice, but the invoice, the pre-trained model from UiPath doesn't have certain fields that you need. Let's say project number or some other fields that you typically would have that you require to extract. In that case, you can still use the invoice as a baseline, but you could add your additional fields. But in our case, we're doing it completely from scratch, right? So the next step now is to actually run the ML training and deploy this, right? This is the next step.
So it's called pipeline run. So we have to create pipeline run for the the uploader, the created ML package. So we have three options: full pipeline run and training run and evaluation run. Evaluation run used for pre-trained models. So we are re-evaluating that in order to accept the new changes. Training run is which we are built from the scratch. We need to do a training run. And full pipeline, it contains training run and evaluation run. For this particular package, we can just, because we built from the scratch, we can do it on a training run. And we have to choose the ML package. And the major version is 6 and minimum version is 0. And we need to choose which data set it needs to be run. So once I enable and I create, so it will automatically start my pipeline. So This one will take some time because it's image-based training. It will roughly around take 45 to 50 minutes for these 10 documents in order to process.
Because GPU is not enabled. If
Yep.
this GPU was enabled, it would go much, much faster.
Much faster. So you can see the ML logs here. So we will come back later. So assume that we completed this part and we will go to the UiPath Studio to complete the next steps. So right now we have completed all these steps. Now we are going with UiPath Studio. So we are going to use Taxonomy Manager, and we have to define the fields for all the documents. Yeah. So we'll see now.
So think of it, the first process is to define all the possible fields on a document. Taxonomy Manager, now we are mapping those to the fields that we want to extract. There might be many fields in a document that you don't care about. Now we're basically going to choose, set up which ones we want, and also then define how the engine should be able to extract that.
So in order to create the document understanding process, we need two packages. One is document understanding ML activities and UiPath intelligent OCR activities. Okay, these are the two main packages required other than the default packages. Once you install these two packages, you will get Taxonomy Manager. So once you click on the Taxonomy Manager, it will pop up a manager like this. So the files will be stored in your project location. So I'll show you why it's important. And first, we need to create a group. You can say Synthio, and I have to create a category.
Finance.
Documents. Let's say documents. And here I need to add my documents. So what is my document? My document is petty cash reimbursement. Let's say cash reimbursement. And it's simply your documents. Once we created the document, we need to define what are the fields I require to extract from this particular document. You can see I need my name and date and this table data and the total and the supervisor name. I don't need received by date. I just need these fields. So I have to define all these things. So first I will create name. So new field name. So it's a multi-value. No. So it's a text type.
Name. Select name. No, type. Select name.
Yeah. So here it's a name.
So hang on, just for that drop down, can I just open that one? So here you can see UiPath has, in essence, predefined a series of types of fields. Text, number, date are pretty, an address obviously is fairly self-explanatory, but there are other mechanisms too. So for example, a Boolean could be like a checkbox, true, false kind of scenario. A keyword, a set can be, it has to be of a predefined list, a specific set of fields. It could be a table, we will use that as well. And keyword, what is that again?
That's keyword is some values, predefined values. Right, that's it.
Okay,
so we are defining our name field as a name. And we have one more field, date. So you can give you the format, but it's optional. If you given the format, it should be easier when you do post processing. Once you extracted the data will comes under date format. And so we have to define table. So you can say line items, and it's a table type. So table, I have to specify the columns. So my test column is description, and it's a text type. The next one is department code. It's a number type and amount. Type of number. Hence A. So my table is completed. After that, I have total amount, and supervisor name.
So we've purposefully kind of made the supervisor name a bit tricky because you can see in the document, if you go back to the document, the print name is there twice, and the approved by supervisor label is not directly associated with that. So that's a bit tricky from a extraction, but there is a way to solve it.
Yeah. So once we completed the taxonomy, so this is all about the taxonomy manager. That's all. Once we completed the taxonomy, the first step of document understanding process is loading taxonomy. So I need to load this taxonomy. So once I loaded the taxonomy, first activity I need to do is I need to digitize the document. Whichever the document I wanted to process, I need to do digitization. So let's say I want to use this. So this is my document part, and this one will give document text and document object model as the output. And here, in order to do a digitization, I need to use one OCR engine. So these are the available OCR engine. I'm going to use UiPath Document OCR. So UiPath Document OCR, I need to give endpoints.
This what Dusha is doing here now is setting up. So this is in essence setting up RPA flow. So you can see here in the RPA flow, these are a series of steps that basically needs to be done. So I think we have one already pre-created. So I think we can go to the Taxonomy Manager for invoice because that's a little different, right? So you can. So for invoice, it's a little different because we don't have to go through all the other steps because in this case, we are using the pre-trained model and we don't need any, let's say, assume we don't need any custom fields for the invoice. So in that case, we can, in essence, just use the pre-trained model and select which fields we want.
Yeah. So I'll show you the taxonomy which I defined for invoice. So we created this taxonomy for the demo. So reinvestment form, as we did earlier, we already developed this one. And you can see here the invoice. We have invoice number, invoice date, and bill to, ship to, all these values.
Click on new field, just don't have to save it. Just go to new field, add a new field.
So here I can add one more field for invoice.
Remit to. Remit to.
Sorry?
Remit to or something like that. Remit. Remit. Yeah, that's it.
But it's text value like this. Okay, and
no, don't save it.
I have to say this invoice and go to PO. PO we have, I defined only 3 fields. Line items is a table. So these are the defined fields. Okay. So what I did is I loaded documents from the my one folder. So you can see here my input documents folder. So here you can see I have different type of documents. I have invoice and PO, and I have some package document as well. Okay, so we're going to I will show you how I develop this flow in order to handle all these documents.
So yeah, so what we're going to do now is that we're going to go into how these documents will get processed. In reality, this could be done in the background. And then basically, for those documents that needs to go through human validation, those would be queued up in Action Center for users to review before they get processed in the next step. But in this example, this demo right here, we're going to run it in essence manually through, so you kind of see what the robot does behind the scenes.
Okay. So as I said, first we loaded the taxonomy and we digitized the document. After the digitization, we did classification. So you can see here. So these are the 3 documents available in my taxonomy. So if any of the document contains invoice keyword, it will be classified as an invoice document. If any of the document contains purchase order or purchase or order, this kind of keyword, it will goes under PO. Reimbursement, it should contain this kind of unique keywords. So in order to identify which kind of document it is, because we have mixed document, and here I have to do the classification. So I have to enable this classification. So here also I can use different classifier. So UiPath have different classifiers. You can see intelligent keyword classifier and keyword based classifier. This is, we are giving a keywords. Intelligent keyword classifier, it will automatically detect keywords from the documents. It need to be set up one time. And once we did the classification, we need to do a data extraction scope. So here we have invoice and package, but we have pre-built a model for PO, but we didn't use that. We used invoice extractor. Okay, so this is a pre-built model. So we used UiPath invoice model, and we need to provide an API key in order to consume that. So we didn't add any additional fields here. We can directly use here. So in our AI center, at the initial stage, you can see I already deployed one model. It's called this is my custom model. You can see here. I already created petty cache scheme. So by following the same steps which I shown to you, so I used here and I given the API. Here is the main tricky part. When you do a configuration, you have to map the fields. So these are the fields from your taxonomy. So these are the fields from your taxonomy. So here you have a set of fields coming from your ML skill or your ML model or your okay. Let me show you. So when I click this drop down, these are the fields I used in my data manager while labeling. So I have to map this with my taxonomy value. So once the data extraction is completed, this value will be mapped to this taxonomy value, and it will give us an output. This one I don't need to select, so I didn't enable any of these things. So this is the invoice extractor, and this is the petty cache extractor. Okay.
But as you can see for invoice, there's a lot more pre-built fields because the invoice
Yeah.
extractor has those already pre-trained. Right?
Yes, I will show you. So here, supervisor, I haven't added here. So I can add it. Okay. And for invoice, we are using pre-built model, right? So when we go to invoice, you can see a new field which I added now, remit to. But you go down. So these are the available fields in the pre-trained model. I can take any of these if it is matching with my field. This one is not matching with any of these fields, so it need to be pre-trained.
So we can delete it.
Okay. So now I can ignore this remittance. Uh, I already mapped few of the fields. So these are the fields coming from UiPath pre-built model. So we have invoice number, name, billing address, and etc. etc. There are so many fields. When you go to line items, here, line items, you can see this much of fields they already declared.
Okay, let's go to the demo. Let's go to the.
Okay. And when you go to PO we didn't use uh, purchase order, etc. We used invoice, etc. as well because we need little bit similar kind of data in the PO as well. So we used same invoice model to PO, but it's exactly almost equivalent results.
So it's just because you use invoice extractor doesn't mean that it has to be an invoice. There's a lot of fields in a purchase order and an invoice are very similar. There's supplier, PO number, there are line items. All of those are very similar. So you can use one model in essence, even for other kinds of documents.